Hey there, it's Creighton with Manual. Just want to do a quick demo showing you how to make a cup of pour-over coffee using the Coffee Maker #3. So first off, you need the coffee maker itself. In this case, we're just using the pitcher, the ceramic dripper, and the cork. And you'll need hot water, of course. I like to have a towel around because it's common you'll make a little bit of a mess when you're making coffee this way. I've got some filters. These are their standard basket filters. Melita is one brand, but you can find them at almost any grocery store in the US. Ground coffee, of course, ground this somewhat coarsely. And then lastly, a little cup, any cup will work to put in your dripper after you're done, so it can drip or drizzle into something. Okay, so let's get started. So first thing you want to do is make sure you've got the ceramic dripper sitting in the pitcher nice and evenly, and then you'll want to grab a filter. So you'll drop one filter in there, and honestly from this point you could just dump coffee in there and start brewing if you wanted, but I think it's a nice step to put some hot water through the filter. This helps warm up the coffee maker itself. It also puts a little liquid on the filter, so it helps it stick a little better. Maybe wash out any papery taste if you're very sensitive about those kind of things. Once you kind of have all the water pass through, you can feel free to just pour out the extra water into your extra cup or into the sink or whatever you have around, and then carefully replace the dripper. And at this point, you can go ahead and put your ground coffee in there. This is around 40 grams of coffee. So that's going to yield 2 good-sized cups of coffee, but we could obviously do a lot more in here. We can go up to 40 ounces of coffee, which would be an 80-gram dose of coffee to start with. And once you have that in there, we're ready to start brewing. So the first thing that most people in the coffee world recommend is that you get the coffee to bloom. So if your coffee is nice and fresh, what you want to do is just get a small amount of water on top just to evenly soak the grinds that are in there. If you want to be very specific about it, usually it's about double the amount of grinds you have in there. So if you were to put if you had 40 grams of coffee in there, maybe you want to put 80 milliliters of water on top. If you don't want to be that accurate, that's fine too. You just want to make sure that it's all kind of evenly soaked. And you can give that about 30 seconds if you'd like. If you want to time it, you can. If you don't, that's fine too. And once it seems like the coffee's sort of settled down, had a chance to release all the gases and things that are in it, then you can start pouring the coffee. And so as you're pouring hot water over the coffee, you just want to be really sure to hit all the different areas. Make sure you're kind of evenly soaking the grinds. It's not ideal to kind of pour it just straight down the middle, because then obviously all the coffee in the middle is getting all the water, and everything on the outside is not really getting extracted evenly. And so one thing that really helps with that is a pour-over kettle. So you can see here I'm using a gooseneck kettle. It gives you a really fine stream, and you can really slow down how much water is hitting it and making sure that it's hitting it in a really even way. You can definitely brew with any kettle you'd like. It doesn't matter, but I've found that when you use a gooseneck kettle, the coffee tends to extract a little more evenly, whereas you may find that the coffee slows down. So as you're pouring hot water on it with a regular style kettle, it may start to clog the filter and slow down a little bit. So that's the one advantage of using a gooseneck kettle. But of course, use what you have. It's not necessarily bad to use anything else. And so once you get right up to the top of the filter, you just kind of have to wait and let it draw down a little bit. And that's, again, an advantage of having a gooseneck, is you can slowly keep adding the water so you don't have to pause for very long. But you will find you don't want to go too high up on the filter, because then it could overflow. So one nice thing about the Coffee Maker #3 is that you don't have to use a scale underneath it while brewing. A lot of times in pour-over, people like to put a scale underneath. That way you really know exactly what number you want to hit when you've poured enough water on the top. While that's super accurate, it's not always necessary. The place you want to hit is actually a little bit of a range. The ratio for what I use, which is 40 grams of coffee, right around the bottom of the handle is like the right spot for me to stop. When I have enough brewed coffee right there, I know I'm good to go. If I put in 60 grams, it'd be somewhere here, and if I'd done a full 80 grams, it'd be right at the top of the handle. So that's actually pretty accurate, and I've found that it's a lot less stressful than worrying about a specific number I need to hit, because honestly, a really good coffee brewing ratio is really a range. It's not really an exact number. So while things are drawing down, if you're waiting a little bit, you can also keep the water warm if you'd like by flipping the cork over and kind of closing the brewing dripper off and kind of keeping things warm. You can also put it in this way as well, but I find that it rests on the filter, and I worry that it might push the filter down into the slurry, so I recommend putting it on upside down. And And then it's just time to sit back and wait as it draws down the rest of the coffee. So one thing you can do, if you do find that the drawdown is slowing down a bit, let's say you were using a regular kettle, or perhaps it just, for whatever reason, it's going a little slower than you'd like, you can take a regular kitchen spoon and stir a little bit or scrape the bottom of the filter, and that will speed things up. You want to be a little careful doing this, because the more you agitate the coffee, the more it'll extract the flavor out of it, and then you run the risk of over extracting your coffee, which won't taste very good. So you really only want to do that if you find that things are slowing down a lot. Generally, if you're brewing anywhere from 40 to 80 grams of ground coffee, so you're going for a full pitcher, it could take anywhere from 3 to 6 minutes to brew it. It can even go beyond that, but ideally you want to keep it below six minutes, because you do, again, run the risk of over extracting the coffee if it spends too much time in contact with water. So you don't necessarily need to have a timer out every time you brew coffee, but it's oftentimes a good idea to kind of know for the amount of coffee you put in there what you think an ideal amount of time is, and shoot for that. So here we are, we're just about at the handle, about halfway up the handle. I do have a little bit of slurry still in here, so I want to be careful, but it is okay to pull the dripper while there's still some slurry in there. And this is where the cup comes in. So I just simply lift up the dripper and place it on the cup, and then put it up over here to the side where it can drip through the rest of the way. But I've got my coffee all here and it's ready to go. One thing I do recommend, you can go ahead and drop a spoon in there and stir it up. Coffee is an extraction, right? So the coffee on the bottom that first extracted is way stronger than the stuff on top. So it's not a bad idea to stir it up. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. And then pop the cork on it and you're good to go. So the double wall construction will keep this coffee in there warm for at least an hour. I found that it's very drinkable in that time. So you can either rush and drink some now, or you can leave it for later. Thanks so much, and I hope you enjoy. Cheers.